everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Banterly, the Gen Z podcast about pop culture, media, and everything in between. My name is Aidan.
And I'm Suha. Welcome back, everyone.
You have some big plans coming up this weekend, right?
Yes, I get to leave for a trip to Belgium tomorrow, which I'm so excited for.
What sparked this trip?
It's a press visit, actually, with the European Union delegation to the US. And one of my professors got to nominate a couple students, and for some reason, he was like, Suha should go to Belgium. And I was like, Suha should go to Belgium. Verbatim our conversation.
C'est très bien. What are you most looking forward to?
The food, like Belgian fries, waffles, the chocolate. I don't imagine I'm gonna buy much. I am bringing an extra duffel bag because I know of how much chocolate and stuff I have to pick up for my parents and my brother and everyone. So I'm excited for that mostly, but also just to get away from New York for a while. I'm excited to still be in a city environment, but a much smaller one. But with that, on our little globe-trotting adventures, should we get into our question of the day?
Let's do it. So, our question of the day today is, what city do you want to move to and why?
Ideally, I would love to spend a few years in Khartoum, the capital of Sudan, just because that has become a reporting focus, and because of the nature of being an international reporting program, there's just a deep-seated wish to get out of the US at this point in my life. But more realistically, I think compared to Khartoum, given its current situation, would be Nairobi, just being the epicenter of where East African reporting is stationed. And yeah, but then my basic answer is London, because I love London. I'm convinced my husband is British, unfortunately.
Those are all great choices. I have been wanting to go to London for a long time. I haven't been to any of those places. I would like to go to all of them, but going to slowly check them off the list. But the city that I would want to move to is actually a city that I just visited this past weekend. I was just in Los Angeles, and every time I go to LA, it was my third time there. Every time I go to LA, I like it more and more because I see different parts of it. And this is my first time going without any parents. So it was fun, young stuff. But I can really see myself there, honestly. And I'm surprised at that because I never thought that I would be able to, because of the lack of walkability that I've gotten so used to in New York. But everything was just, I feel like I could breathe deeper, and I love the sunshine, and the people were surprisingly friendly. And I don't know. So my upcoming goal, I want to, at some point soon, get an Airbnb for 2 weeks and just live there by myself, work remotely because my job's already remote, and just test it out, see how I would like it. If I hate it, I know that I hate it because I tried. But if I love it, then maybe I can one day pivot to a more full-time thing.
That would be cool. I didn't realize your job was remote. That gives you a lot of flexibility. I guess it's kind of the romanticization of moving abroad or whatever. I know it's caused some economic problems around the world, but there is a huge part of the remote working population that'll move to different cities around the world for months, and that sounds kind of fun, but I can only imagine, I have a lot of stuff, so I don't know if I'd be able to do it.
I really do love clothes, and so it's going to be a matter of deciding which of my babies are coming with me, but I think I could pull it together for 2 weeks and then figure out. But yeah, the beauty of remote work, you can really work anywhere.
But on the subject of international and world travel, we're talking about an international show today, Call Me Bae, which is a recently released Indian show.
मेरी family में there's no such thing as too much bling. 7 luxury cars, एक chopper, और एक fairy tale wedding.
It's been kind of compared to Schitt's Creek and Emily in Paris and a little bit of Two Broke Girls.
Okay, so for anybody who hasn't seen the show, the main premise, as Suha said, very Schitt's Creek vibes, but the story follows Bella, which everyone's call her Bae, so her nickname's Bae, Bella Bae Chowdhury, who's a wealthy socialite whose life turns upside down after a cheating scandal that she's involved in.
तो क्या करोगी job?
Yes, I will get a job. And unlike you, I'll do it without the family name.
She was cheating with her personal trainer, and her husband caught him together cheating in the gym. So after that scandal, she was forced to leave her privileged lifestyle behind. She was stripped of her wealth, and the show kind of follows her navigating the challenges of living without the luxuries that she's had since she was a baby, all while discovering her true self and what is her passion in life. She ends up getting a job as a journalist at a big TV news station and then begins to uncover a sexual assault case involving a very high profile figure. It's about all the friends she meets along the way, and it's cute.
Yeah. Yeah. Neither of us sound super sure. Some of the other characters in the show, Neil N, Prince, Satyajit, Syra, Tamara, and Harleen, who are all either like friends or coworkers that she meets at her new job. What were your general thoughts after watching the show, Aidan?
One, I just thought it was very silly from the start. I don't know how to describe it, but it just took me a while to get into and get to know the style of the show and the characters to enjoy it. But once I did, I thought it was very entertaining. I laughed a lot. I enjoyed the characters, and I especially liked the last 4 episodes that really focused on Bae and her friends trying to uncover this sexual assault allegation. And I just thought that was cool to see them all band together, and they all come from different backgrounds. But the show isn't Hindi. It's a mix between Hindi and English.
Stress less, buy more. Life है कोई रवि शास्त्री की commentary नहीं बदल जाएगी.
When I was first watching with English as the language and English subtitles, I noticed that sometimes their lips matched up and sometimes it didn't. So then I played it in Hindi and found that they would go in between English and Hindi depending on what they were talking about. So I ended up going back and forth when I was watching it. Sometimes I would just choose it in all English if I was feeling like I knew that I was going to be turning away from the screen at some point. And sometimes if I knew that I was going to be locked in, I chose Hindi because I like when what they're saying matches up with the lips. That's hard for me to watch something and the lips don't match what's coming out. So, but that's a me thing. But how about you? What were your thoughts?
I was dumb and did not realize that my Amazon Prime defaulted to English. And I had the same thing where I would sometimes be like watching and be like, their lips are not matching up. But then the next line they would and be like, okay, I'm just going crazy. And so I didn't explore that much further. But I do think I might go back and watch maybe the pilot in the original Hindi. I think I felt really similarly. I think it was not my typical watch, but it was like a fun, mindless thing. Again, it did take a while to get into. I feel like the last 4 episodes, which weirdly are the ones that a lot of people are saying they dislike, I liked them as well because I thought it was when the story like finally settled into a clear plot. Like going into the show, you expect it to be about how this like rich girl tries to re-enter real society in that sort of Schitt's Creek way of like learning how to use a credit card or like actually doing your own grocery shopping. It's not that. It moves past that very quickly, and she just becomes like a hashtag girl boss working girl very fast. The heaviness of the show towards the end kind of comes on a little randomly, and so it was hard sometimes to know like when the show is trying to actively be a comedy and when it was trying to like really say something about society. What were some things you disliked about the show?
I mean, the writing wasn't the best writing I've ever heard, and some of that could be because of the translation and how that translated into English, the jokes in Hindi, but some of it I just think was just not the best. And also, just in terms of Bae and the whole premise, it was not believable to me how she could remain so happy and optimistic after being thrown out of her house and forced to live in like a hostel and share spaces and get rid of not have access to all her clothes and bags. She was a little bit too happy because it's not like she had married into money. Her family they had some financial issues, but she was raised in a wealthy family from the get-go. So it's not like she knows what it was like to be at the bottom. Like this is all that she knew. And I thought it was a little hard to believe that she was so gung-ho and happy to just get out into the workforce and start, meeting people and riding those little taxis around.
No, I think that's fair. I thought that it was, like, incredibly surface level with the initial plot, like, as you've talked about, like, where it doesn't explore the fact that she does go from, like, the riches to rags thing before it turns into just, like, a workplace story underdog sort of thing. But what really annoyed me was that, like, beyond Bay, every character was very, like, shallow in terms of their development. Like it said, like, it felt like maybe when they were composing the idea of the show, each character got, like, a one-line description that was like, "This is the, like, loony trainer she has an affair with, who's also somehow a computer genius, period." And, like, that was Prince, for instance. And so I think it would have been more fun, like, because she relied so much on the people around her, to see a little bit more of those people. Another thing that personally annoyed me, and I think this is just like anytime I watch international media, like, I watch it specifically, like, to feel like I'm not watching an American show, and this one felt like it had an over-reliance on Western cultural references and themes that didn't always feel authentic. For instance, like, there were constant references to the US, whether it was, like, Los Angeles or New York or Colombia or random things, and then even the brands in the show, like, the designer brands are, like, Western strongholds of, like, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, and, like, Versace, but not anything that, like, would tell you very truly like it was an Indian show. There were also random references to, like, Harry Styles and Taylor Swift. I also just didn't really buy into the comparison of, like, Schitt's Creek, for instance. Maybe a little bit more Emily in Paris, but were there any overlaps that you thought you did see between them?
I mean, the only similarity with Schitt's Creek that I saw was wealthy people and then they lose their money in some shape or form, and that was about it. Because Schitt's Creek was all about the family aspect, and
No right
it's
to
just
lay
totally
this
different.
financial and psychological burden on us.
Well, maybe I'll talk to her.
Now she has to move into one of those homes for unwed mothers.
Oh my God, imagine.
Moira, that's not gonna happen.
Oh, I'm sure there are plenty of them on this side of the tracks. Let the nuns take care of the little stranger.
What Alexis needs now is
I don't
to
know
feel
the best
supported
word to
by
describe
her
it, just a
family.
different vibe of a show. Like, Call Me Bae felt more like sitcom with laugh track versus Schitt's Creek was like comedy and still silly, but just a different, more serious, not serious. I don't know what the right word is.
I think Schitt's Creek is, like, a little bit more flushed out. It almost feels like this show wasn't sure if it was gonna get picked up for a season 2, so it crammed an entire show's storyline into one season. Whereas, like, Schitt's Creek, by the end of season 1, they're still not well adjusted. They can barely survive in Schitt's Creek, especially, like, Moira and Alexis, you know?
No, exactly. Like, their adjustment period was a lot more believable in Schitt's Creek. I would have a hard time adjusting to that stark of a difference in lifestyle. Schitt's Creek, the whole season 1, they were still adjusting. I think Emily in Paris, when I was watching, I was like, hit the nail on the head just because she's posting on her stories every few seconds, like hashtag this, hashtag that, like hashtag like first day at work, or like I'm here in my hostel, look at my new friends, like just got kicked out. Like even when her husband was kicking her out, she took a selfie right after talking to him and her brother and was like on the way out. That was really silly. But the outfits too, like Emily in Paris is known for a lot of fashion choices. And I think that had a lot of fashion choices. They were out there, they were brand names. It was fun. You know, Emily in Paris, they can knock on her outfits, but they're fun to see. They're visually appealing.
That's so fair. Yeah, I think I kind of resent the comparison to American shows because then it's just like, and I know that's what it was going for, right? It just doesn't fit within the storylines. Like you said, like Schitt's Creek takes a lot longer to develop. And in that one, like the community and the city itself are very much characters that add to the plot. Whereas here, you don't really feel like a specific spark of like Mumbai or anything that would make it like this show couldn't be picked up and placed in any other major city around the world. Emily in Paris, I think, would be the most similar. Like, it was just a girl in a new space. Like, if they called the show Bay in Mumbai, that would track.
With all these comparisons to American shows, it begs the question whether the show was trying to imitate American media or kind of spoof and make fun of it. And I think it was trying to imitate it. When I think of a spoof, I think of like Vampires Suck for Twilight. That is just such, or like that movie, The 100, and epic movie where they just have a bunch of little vignettes of, well, you can tell like, oh, this is a joke. But I thought that they were just trying to imitate. I didn't really see them making fun of it. I think they were trying to emulate American media.
I agree that they were trying to imitate it. I think what I did read in interviews afterwards that they were calling the humor and everything like very tongue-in-cheek and self-aware, and I was like, how much of that was like actually what you were going for, and how much is that you guys like trying to course correct after initial reviews come out and you're like, no, we can own that the writing was bad because that was intentional. um but yeah, it disappointed me that like beyond the rickshaw there really felt like there was no infusion of Indian culture, and then it just kind of confused me who the audience was. Was it like Indian Gen Z who like is it leaning into like American exceptionalism, or is it trying to reach a Western audience despite the fact that like for us it kind of falls flat?
I think you had said this in our production meeting, but I think that it's like older people, like Gen X, millennials, who are trying to make a show and what they think Gen Z would like, and they're just putting all these slang terms.
I should know because I'm a PADI certified master scuba diver.
And things that they think that we would enjoy, and it's just not hitting the mark. It's very silly, and I don't know what type of audience they're looking for. I mean, I did enjoy it, so maybe they're onto something with Gen Z people, because I did think it was entertaining.
I kind of reflected a little bit more after we had talked, and I think part of it's also like the issue of like cultural diffusion. It very well could have been at the time this was being made, this is what like Indian Gen Z was engaged with, or like this is what the like reflection of America had diffused to outside of our realm, if that makes sense. Because now I look back at like when I would go visit my family in Sudan, there were things that I thought were no longer relevant that had just become relevant there. For an American, I thought the jokes and the humor felt very like 2018. Bae is not a term we have used in a while. There was a random Guts hat in the show, and I couldn't tell, like, based on the way, it was like a white hat with black text. So I couldn't tell if it was just like when you go to a foreign country and there's random English merch and it was just a Guts hat, or if it was like specifically an Olivia Rodrigo merch thing. But I'm leaning towards the first one.
Despite all the silly, not super funny things, I did find that there were some things that I was laughing out loud. Like when her mom tells her, in a world full of fakes, be a Birkin. And when her mom was actually pretty funny, because her mom also told her, you were just as useless as the pea in pneumonia. And then when Bae says, if you want to be a skinny bitch, drink a skinny bitch tequila soda. I was like, it's just like weird humor that just makes me giggle.
Some of it's like a little like, I feel like maybe you just ask ChatGPT to write you a joke in English. But yeah, like one of the other ones that I thought was funny, but like definitely wouldn't land in an American show, was like the whole Posh Lives Matter at the open mic.
My piece is called Posh Lives Matter. Pieces of me scatter on a tacky bunk bed. Posh Lives Matter.
For those who haven't watched the show, at some point they're at an open mic night at a bar, and she gets sick of hearing all the poems on stage, so she goes up and recites her own about how posh lives matter. And it's just like a good like 2-minute bit on why the rich and their lives matter.
Carbs will make me fatter. I need my keto bread. Posh lives matter. Our hearts are also red. My designer clothes tatter. Inside, I'm a little bit dead. Posh lives matter.
And I just think like that specific phrasing of posh lives matter, for instance, wouldn't work in the US. And just a lot of, I think, the other stuff of like her disgust towards carbs for a lot of the show, for instance. If that were on an American show, it would have to play or land in a different way in order for it to like not immediately get canceled.
As we're sitting here talking about, I think for me, the perfect way to describe the vibes of this show is that it feels like adult Disney Channel, and not in like an inappropriate way, but just the way that the humor is delivered and the way the jokes are written feels like a Disney Channel show. It's just the topics are a little bit more adult.
I think that's a great comparison.
versus like Schitt's Creek isn't a Disney Channel comedy. It's more like a, I don't know, like a CBS comedy.
Even the fashion is very Disney-esque. Like, yeah, it's almost like you could hear them tell a joke and then kind of pause for fake laughter to be infused. To that point as well, the music in the show really, really emphasizes the Disneyification of it all. Just invented that term, gonna trademark it. But there was this really stupid Hey Bae music that played every 2 scenes.
Hey babe, the way you slay, teri aadatein, teri baatein bhi. Hey babe.
And it made me want to die. Every time like anything happened, it would just go, Hey Bae, over and over. And it almost reminded me of like the Hannah Montana transitional music. We're like, well, I don't even remember how it goes.
Oh, whoa, whoa, yeah.
Yes, that one. That exact one.
And also the repetition of the line "Call Me Bae," like when people were like, "Bella ma'am, like call me Bae," like she would say like, "Oh, call me Bae." Like she said that like the first few times, oh, that's cute, like it's her tagline. But then after the 20th time, I'm like, okay, we get it. We're gonna call you Bae. Okay.
Also, it's just one of those things where it's like, if this is someone you're never gonna talk to again, now you're just making it more difficult for them to remember how to refer to you. Like, dang, wait, is it Bella? Is it Bae? Like, again, it is not a name short enough that requires a nickname in the first place. But for that nickname to specifically be Bae just makes it so much more annoying.
Hey babe, the way you slay, teri aadatein, teri baatein bhi. Hey babe, teri aankhon mein tere khwab hai.
We touched on earlier how the last 4 episodes kind of dive into this sexual assault case, and the whole show itself wasn't all Disney, especially one of the last scenes in the last episode where Bae is a guest on the confessional, which is the parent company that she works at, and the host SS has her and the person that she helped accuse of sexual assault via an Instagram live with the actress who accused him of it. And they're all on this like panel sort of questionnaire thing where they're talking about it. And the scene starts with SS, the host, kind of going in on Bae, trying to go for her credibility, saying she has, oh, like she's stolen things. She's not even a journalist. Like, look at her. She was cheating on her husband. But then she picks herself up. She has the receipts.
You couldn't catch that mic. You couldn't carry your daughter the other day using your left side as well, am I right?
So?
So, the reason is you have a frozen shoulder. And you've had this problem since 2.5 years? The 3 doctors who are treating you for this, they came on record and told me the same.
It was a nice scene to see her like really find her voice at the end, and with the help of Harleen, the producer, in the booth, and Tamara was there with the edits and the graphics behind her. It was a nice little conclusion.
Yeah, I think that was like a good scene, generally speaking. Like, as I kind of hinted at earlier, the writing of the show doesn't lend itself well for you to know when to take it seriously and when not to. And I'd say that this is the only scene that I would say like clearly is like pushing for serious analysis, like a really decent commentary on how like those accusing people in power often are subjected to like character attacks of their own. But I did think it was a good scene. It helped balance out some of the like silliness that precedes it throughout the series. Another like, I guess, heavier thing in the show too was colorism in the show.
I don't know enough about Indian media. In the media, they just favor people who are of lighter skin complexions, whether they're black or Asian or Latin. That was something that I definitely noticed.
Whenever I'd visit Africa, like Bollywood and Indian media is a really big fixture out there, just because it's like geographically closer to the African continent. And I think a lot of the cultural themes overlap a little bit more than Hollywood did. Growing up, like it's very common that like a lot of people in the Horn of Africa are like obsessed with Bollywood. That speaks as well to, like, the beauty standards that are then projected out from that. Like, I remember being in, like, malls in Sudan, for instance, and, like, Fair& and Lovely is very regularly sold. And for those who don't know what that is, that's like a bleaching cream, like a skin bleaching cream, and the advert typically had, like, a very light-skinned Indian woman on it. While shows like this may not diffuse very well to the US, they do diffuse to other countries, and they play into, like, how beauty is perceived. And I think that's really disappointing that, like, the show does feature really extremely light-skinned people with maybe 1 to 2 very side characters appearing with even slightly darker skin. Like, I am not a dark-skinned person at all. I don't even know that I would consider myself brown skin, but the fact that I was darker than the vast majority of people in that show is, like, very, very telling. And I know that has been a problem in this media before, and so it felt, like, almost too obvious to, like, not confront almost.
Yeah, it also reminds me of when I went to China in high school and the advertisements there, all the Chinese models were very Americanized, like they're very big features and very, very light skin, and
Mhm.
it's like
Mhm.
must be global, you know? Must be global. Mr. Worldwide is also known as
Oh my
colorism,
god.
not Pitbull.
Oh my god.
It's
No,
not a bad
that's a really
joke.
good
You know, this show did cover the serious topics that we've discussed, but it was also fun and Disney-like. But would you recommend it to someone? Do you think an American audience would enjoy it as much as we sort of did?
I don't know that I would recommend it, because I just don't want it to be the type of thing that someone watches and thinks all Indian or, like, Bollywood media is like this. I have watched other things and, like, they are incredible, and so I wouldn't want this someone to be someone's first venture. I think if it's, like, someone who's watched some stuff before, maybe, but I also just don't imagine a conversation in which it'd be like, "Oh my god, like, speaking of that, here's this show I recently watched that you would just love." How about you?
Yeah, I can't say that I would recommend it to everybody. I started watching it with one of my friends, and we were both just like, because it was the first episode and I hadn't understood the vibes of the show. So I was like, what the heck? This would not be at the top of my list of recommendations. But if someone was looking for like a silly, like easy watch, if they have like a long plane ride and they just want to knock something out that they can fall in and out of sleep, maybe this, like, because it is entertaining at the end of the day. But I don't know how much love it would get from an American audience, just because this was one of the first pieces of Indian media that I'd ever seen. And yeah, I don't know that I would recommend it as the first because it's different.
That's super fair. I think that's interesting though about, like, despite how big Bollywood is as a name, how little both of us and maybe most Americans have really watched. Like, even the fact that Ananya Panday has 25 million followers on Instagram, and, like, this is the first time she's even crossed my radar, and she's, like, known as an Indian nepo baby. So it's interesting that, like, there's these wide, large celebrity followings in other parts of the world that, like, just don't even come across our radar sometimes. And it makes me feel like just like such a gross American. Feel like, ugh, you just watch like everything on like American Netflix and not try to watch beyond.
I think about like the marketing for the show, and it is a Prime Video. Like Prime is a like, you know, they have a lot of great shows on there. And I think back to, gonna bring it back, Diana Agron. But Diana Agron was in a Spanish show on Netflix last summer. Did you know? Probably not, because it wasn't advertised in America at all.
And I think it's also like discrediting the audience when streaming services or outlets like don't promote that international media to an American audience, because like, yes, Americans are vapid, we're arrogant, all this stuff. But when presented with other options, I feel like people kind of enjoy them. Like Korean media, for instance, when it's been marketed very well, it's so well received in the US. And not to say like we should be the tastemakers of the world or anything, but it's like as such a diverse country, like I think it does mean a lot when something lands here. And I think that Korean media should have really indicated to these large like media conglomerates that like we are willing to engage in international media and we want to be a part of like international conversations, but we're already being assumed that we won't want to by them.
Yeah, so true. Do you have any recommendations for anybody who maybe wanted to check out some other international media?
One show that I did watch this last summer, it's a show called Hiramandi.
Touch your patron's hand while placing the pan, lighting up his hopes and desires at the same time.
Sir, these TawaiFs are very powerful. And they have the Nawabs under their thumbs.
It's amazing. First, the budget for each show looks like it might be $1 billion. The glamour, the settings, it's so deeply rooted in the culture, which I love. Like, when I'm watching something, I want it to feel like I'm watching it from that country, if that makes sense. It's like the same way someone watches High School Musical and knows that like this is an American media thing. It's in Urdu, so you do need to watch with subtitles, but it's a really great drama series that one of my friend's roommates put on. And again, like it was recommended to me by like someone who was South Asian. So it's very likely that I wouldn't have heard of it had it not come from someone already within that community.
We're just one, aka Aidan, watch it. Is it on like a streaming service?
It's on Netflix, and just like truly, like you're just in shock half the time of how good the costuming and set design is.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, maybe I'll download it for my bus to DC this afternoon.
I wish this kind of stuff was more available to us in terms of like advertising. Like I'd love to see an ad or two, especially in New York, you know, like we're one of the closer cities to Europe on the East Coast. We have a very diverse makeup. It'd be great to see more of that kind of stuff.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would. Well, if you've seen the show or if you have thoughts, please share them with us, Banterly at immigrantlypod.com, and engage with us on our socials, Immigrantly Media on Instagram and Immigrantly Podcast on TikTok.
Banterly is produced by Shay Yu, written by us, the co-hosts Suha, Musa, and Aidan Taylor, and the executive producer and editorial review is done by Sadia Khan.
Our sound designer and editor is Lou Raskin. The Banterly theme music is by Simon Hutchinson, and additional music is by Epidemic Sound.
See y'all next week.